lot of education and outreach in the community. So let's see here. So we work for what's called a low-income taxpayer clinic called the Tennessee Taxpayer Project. That's like well, anyway, we help people if they have legal problems with the IRS. So if the IRS is sending people nasty letters or says, or if the IRS is saying that you owe a big debt, we can sometimes help with that. We help with debts to the IRS. We can maybe help get back refunds the IRS took from you, and we can maybe stop the IRS from taking a tax refund in the first place. And we'll talk more about what that all means later in the presentation. We don't work. Go ahead.
Can you explain what IRS is, please?
Sure, I'll do that on the next slide. We don't work for the IRS or the US government. We're private. So just as a real basic overview, in the United States, if you make money, you have to pay taxes on that money to the federal government. And the IRS is the part of the government that collects the taxes. Every year, if you're living in the US, you have to figure out what your tax bill is and report it to the IRS. And the way to do that, to figure out your tax bill and report it, is to file a tax return. So when people talk about filing a tax return, it means that they're filling out a whole bunch of information and they're sending it to the IRS through one method or another. The good news is that it's easier to file taxes. It's easier to file a tax return, figure out your tax bill, than it ever has been. There are all kinds of online programs that are really easy to use and really easy to enter in all your information and send it to the IRS. Places like TurboTax Online. I use an online website called Free Tax USA. I really like that one. And basically, you can use your phone or your computer and use all your information and enter it in, and then it'll calculate your tax bill for you, or it'll calculate and say that you don't have a tax bill. You should actually get money from the IRS instead of paying the IRS money. So one of the things to know about taxes is that when it comes time to file your taxes, you might have to send money to the IRS, or the IRS might send you money. It just depends on what happened during the year. So the due date for filing a tax return every year is April 15th or around there. And there are some exceptions to that, but by and large, the due date is April 15th. So why should you file your taxes? Well, first of all, it's the law sometimes. For a lot of people, you're required to file taxes, and we'll talk more about that later in the presentation about whether or not you're required to file taxes. Also, if you file, the IRS might send you money. Like I said, when you calculate your tax bill for the year, it might turn out that instead of sending the IRS money, the IRS will send you money. And so it makes sense to do the calculation and see, at least do the calculation and see if you will get some money from the IRS. For most immigration applications, you must show that you filed tax returns. That's another reason to file. So I want to talk about the basic way that taxes work for the two main types of workers in the US. And this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's important because for different types of workers, taxes work very, very differently. And so it's important to know what kind of worker you are so you can know what to expect with your taxes. There are two types of workers, wage earners and self-employed workers. Wage earners are more common. They have a normal job with a boss. If you're working at McDonald's, working at Walmart, working on a farm, working in an office, and so on, if you have a boss who's telling you what to do and how to do it, if you have a boss that's telling you when to come into work, then you're probably a wage earner. For example, I'm a wage earner. I have a boss who tells me I need to be in office from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, at least. and I get instructions on how to do my job. My boss gives me my computer, my boss gives me my office, my boss gives me the tools I need to work. So I'm a wage earner. Self-employed workers are more like their own boss. They set their own hours and they decide how to do their job instead of following someone else's instructions. So an Uber driver is their own boss, sort of. It's a little bit iffy, but they're sort of their own boss. They buy their own car, they decide how their car is cleaned and modeled and everything, and they decide when they will when they will pick up jobs as an Uber driver. If you're an electrician and you go out to houses and repair them for your livelihood, you're self-employed. If you clean houses for a living and you, it's possible that you could be a wage earner or self-employed if you're a cleaner. If you work for a company, anyway, this is too much, but basically, if you're your own boss and you set your own hours, you're self-employed. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about how taxes work differently for those two types of workers. For wage earners, every time you get a paycheck, usually your federal taxes are withheld or taken out of the paycheck automatically by your boss, by the company you work for. So if you look at your pay stub, okay, I just got a note. Were people able to see my slides before? Okay, great. If you look at your pay stub that you get from your company every week, you should see a line that shows you how much in federal taxes have been taken out of your paycheck. So it'll say something like federal withholding, something or other. That money is going to the IRS. So every paycheck you get, a little bit of that money goes to the IRS to pay your federal tax bill. So throughout the year, more and more money goes to the IRS. And then at the end of the year, you have to figure out whether that money that went to the IRS is enough to pay your tax bill. Or maybe it was too little, or maybe it was too much. But basically, I'll get into an example on the next slide. But basically, your taxes get paid throughout the year automatically. And so for most people, if you're a wage earner, if you have a normal job, quote unquote, then your tax bill at the end of the year, you shouldn't have to pay any taxes at the end of the year because it was already paid throughout the year because of the money that was taken out of your paycheck. So just as an example, let's say I work at Walmart for 40 hours a week, making $10 an hour. So I made $20,800 in 2021. And Walmart, over the course of the year, took $2,000 from my paycheck. When it came time to add it all up at the end of the year, it turned out to be $2,000 that they took out of my paycheck to pay federal taxes. And so I added up my tax bill for 2021 and it turned out to be $825. So that's what the software told me it was. I went online, filed my taxes, and the software told me that I owed $825 in taxes. But I had already paid the IRS $2,000 since Walmart was withholding money from my paycheck. That's more than my $825 tax bill, and so the IRS will send me more than $1,000 when I file my taxes because the money that I paid the IRS throughout the year was more than my tax bill ended up being. So you can see that basically, as you know, this is an example of the tax bill being paid throughout the year. And then there's like we figure out the final amount when it comes time to file and pay taxes after the year is over. For self-employed workers, it's very different. No one will withhold your money throughout the year. No one will take money out of your paycheck. So you may end up with a big tax bill at the end of the year because it's not being paid throughout the year. Taxes are also much higher for self-employed taxpayers. Someone who isn't married and has no children, who makes $20,000 in 2021, will have a tax bill of $750-ish if they're a wage earner, but $2,600 if they're self-employed. And of course, this is just a rough estimate. Why is the tax bill so much bigger for self-employed people? That's because there are taxes called Social Security and Medicare taxes that get paid on your tax bill if you're self-employed. And they don't get paid on your tax bill at the end of the year if you're a wage earner. So, but it doesn't really matter why. The point is that if you're self-employed, if you drive for Uber or DoorDash or something like that, if you're your own boss, then your tax bill is going to be much higher than most people at the end of the year. And so you have to be careful. Self-employed people can send what are called estimated tax payments to the IRS throughout the year in order to avoid a big tax bill at the end. And that's what most people do. But truthfully, we have many clients who are self-employed who just can't afford to pay their taxes, and so they don't pay. That's not good, obviously, and it can get you into problems down the line. And that's something you need to be thinking about when it comes time to deciding whether you should drive for Uber or get a job at Walmart or McDonald's or whatever. The taxes are going to be a lot higher if you're driving for Uber than in other places.
Ben, there's a question.
Okay, sure. We're asking for a quick pause. We can go ahead and ask questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Michelle, did you have a question? Hello, Michelle, question.
Yeah,
Did
we
you have
were
a question?
we were just going to check on them real quick. Just give me a quick minute, please.
Does anybody here have a question? Regine, you don't look like you have a question. So you're not yet. So you're self-employed, Maria, and you. So you're self-employed, right? So this is something you have to deal with every month or every quarter, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if you wait to the end of the year, it'll be really hard.
You pay every year.
Yeah. I have a student who's a painter, and he waited to the end of the year to pay his taxes, and we'll talk about what problems that can be. So it can be problems. So I think we're good on questions here. Let's wait on Michelle. I think we're good to go, Ben.
Okay.
Let's wait till we hear from Michelle, actually. I think she's just checking for comprehension from her class.
Okay, we're good now. Thank you so much.
All righty. So ignore this slide, don't read it. But one important thing, if you're self-employed, if you're self-employed and you are your own boss and you're driving for Uber or DoorDash or whatever, it's important to know that filing your taxes is going to be a little bit more complicated than most people. Basically, if I drive for Uber and Uber pays me $20,000, that doesn't mean that I'm going to pay taxes on $20,000. What I need to do before that is subtract all of the cost of maintaining my car and all the gas I spent on driving people around as an Uber driver. And then I can pay taxes on that final amount. So if you're driving for Uber or DoorDash, it's important that you go to a tax preparer for at least the first year so that you know how all that works. Because if you just report what Uber put on in your bank account to the IRS, you're going to pay a lot more taxes than necessary. So I'll just say, don't worry about this slide, but if you work for Uber or DoorDash or you're self-employed, you should definitely go to a tax preparer so you can know how to deal with that on your taxes. And then, so don't try to do things yourself. Don't try to file taxes yourself for the first time if you're self-employed, because you need to know how to do it first. Okay. So who is required to file a tax return? Who is legally required? Wage earners must file a tax return if they make over $12,500 or $25,000 if they're married. Self-employed people must file a tax return if they made more than $400. So basically every self-employed person needs to file a tax return. But even if you don't meet these amounts, it's probably smart to file taxes anyway. So, you know, I recommend that you file taxes no matter how much you make, if you're working at all, because again, maybe the IRS will send you money. So you should file your taxes, prepare your taxes, and figure out whether you owe the IRS or the IRS owes you.
Also, Ben, if it's a wage earner, they will take for the Social Security if they don't file taxes, so they will not get the quarters for the Social Security when they are retired.
Okay, that's another good reason to file taxes, because it will put more money towards your Social Security account, which means that you might get more money after you retire. If you have children, that's really important when it comes to taxes. And it's not just if you have children of your own. If you have children who are living with you and they are a relative, even if they're not your child, that's a really important thing that you need to talk to your tax preparer about. Or if you're doing your taxes yourself, you need to enter those children's information. So generally, if you have a child or a close biological relative, like a grandkid or a sister or a niece, and they're under 18 and they're living with you, you may be able to reduce your tax bill or even get the IRS to send you a lot of money. So again, that's under 18 or 17 sometimes, basically a young kid, a close relative, biological relative, they have to be related by blood, and they're living with you. So those three things, if those three things are true, you may be able to get a big bonus on your taxes, and you may be able to get a big check in the mail from the IRS, but it's not guaranteed. There are different exceptions, so you shouldn't expect it until you've actually filed your taxes. If the child does not have a Social Security number, you may not be able to get a big refund. So that's another requirement. So if you have children living with you, talk to your tax preparer about it. And if you're filing taxes online, be sure to enter the children's information so that the tax program can figure out whether you deserve to get a big refund or not. So for people who have kids living with them, it's important to do your taxes and do them right so that you can know whether you deserve to get a big refund or not. And this is a good time to talk about what I was asked to talk about. So right now it's tax season. Everyone's filing their taxes, or at least a lot of people are. Taxes are due on April 15th or thereabouts. But those taxes that people are filing now have to do with what was happening during 2021. So if you came to the United States in January of 2022, can you get a big tax bonus for having kids who are living with you? Probably not, because the US will probably be looking at what you were doing during 2021. And if you were outside of the country, then you may not qualify for any of these tax benefits. But next year in 2023, when you're filing taxes for this year, then you may qualify. And we'll talk more about that. So Social Security numbers and ITINs, I'll just touch briefly on this. Some benefits that I talked to you today might not be available to you if you don't have a Social Security number. But if you don't have a Social Security number, you can still file taxes. If you don't have a Social Security number, you can apply for what's called an ITIN and use that to file taxes instead. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but basically, if you don't have a Social Security number and you don't have an ITIN, and someone else in your household doesn't have a Social Security number or an ITIN, you should try to fix that as soon as possible. Apply for an ITIN as soon as possible if you have children in your household without them, or if you have anybody else in your household without them. And
They
that's
can
something.
call the tax hotline and we will guide them what to do, how to get it, the ITIN number.
Paula just said, call the tax hotline. I will talk about what that means and where to call later on in the presentation. But basically, there's a phone number where you can call and get some advice about how to get an ITIN for someone in your household or for yourself. So the Earned Income Credit is an important tax credit for people who work and who have children. Someone who makes $11,000 and has no children can get $1,500 in Earned Income Credit for 2021. So that's a big amount of money. So that's one reason to file your taxes, is to find out if you're eligible to get the Earned Income Credit. $1,500 is about the max for someone who has no children. Depending on how much you make, you will probably get less than that. You may even get $0 in Earned Income Credit. It just depends. But it's a good reason to file your taxes so you can figure out whether you qualify for the Earned Income Credit, especially if you have kids. Someone who makes $16,000 from working and has 3 children living with them can get $6,000 from the Earned Income Credit. Obviously, that's a big deal. So you need to figure out whether you qualify by talking to a tax preparer or carefully doing your taxes online. And again, not everyone qualifies for this credit. So just because you made $1,600 last year doesn't mean that you'll get a $6,000 check. So don't get your hopes up too much. You have to do your taxes and figure out whether you qualify. Child tax credit. If you have children living with you, you may be able to get $3,000 or more per child. Again, not everyone qualifies, but if you have children living with you and they're close relatives, talk to a tax preparer about that and figure out whether you qualify for the child tax credit. Again, this is looking at what was happening. I already talked about that, so I won't talk about it again. Let's see here. So just as a warning, the child tax credit this year is bigger than it's ever been. $3,000 or $3,600 per child. For 2021, you can get the child tax credit whether or not you've been working. That's great for single moms. Even if you've made $0 working in 2021, you can still get the child tax credit for the children who were living with you. Usually. Again, there are exceptions. But for 2022, that is for what's happening this year, when you file taxes next year, both those things will no longer be true. The max credit will be $1,400 for low-income families, and you will have to have worked in order to receive it. So when you file taxes next year, if you weren't working during 2022 and you had kids living with you, you will get $0 in Earned Income Credit and $0 in child tax credit. So in America, in order to get these big tax credits, you usually need to be working at a job in order to get them. That's an important part of the tax system. In order to get the big dollar amounts, you have to be working probably full-time minimum wage at somewhere. So basically in America, if you want to get big tax credits, you have to work, and that's how it works. And that's how the tax system is designed. Just briefly, there's something called the other dependent credit. If you're,
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So if people, I know that we're focused on the people who are sending their taxes for the first time, but for people who weren't, is it right that they might have already received the child tax credit money in 2021 and might not get it at the end of the year?
Sure. So these, basically, I've listed these $3,000 or $3,600 per child numbers. But if you received money from the IRS over the second half, if the IRS was sending you monthly checks, then it's possible that the money you get per child may be smaller than what I've written here. So the IRS may have already sent you part of this $3,000 or part of this $3,600 late last year. You should still file your taxes, and you will still get money per child if you qualify. But it might be $1,500 or $1,800 per child instead of $3,000 or $3,600. So if you got money late last year from the IRS in a monthly check, that's something that you should talk to your tax preparer about.
I will add the children must live with you for more than 6 months of the year. And on the rules that, because I think they are asking is, Ben is like, for example, they came the last year in 2021, the last 6 months. So the rule is, it's considered to be if they have lived in the United States 30 days of this current year and 183 days during the 3 years period. So if they have lived in the 6 months of 2021, 5 months of 21, they can still file their taxes and be considered resident aliens and for tax purposes.
So basically,
kind of complicated, but what we added is like 31 days of the present year, 183 days of the last 2021, and they're considered to be living in the United States for more than 6 months.
So basically, if you've, if you're not sure whether you lived in the United States long enough to qualify, just write down how much you lived in the United States for the last 3 years, and then talk to your tax preparer about that.
Yeah.
We have 2 questions here, Ben.
Yep.
Number one, we have a young first-time mother here with us. Her baby is due in May, is that right? Is there anything special she needs to do for next year? Because she will have had the baby for over 6 months.
There's nothing special about it.
Okay.
When you file taxes online, the program that you use to file your taxes, even if you're doing them on your own, will ask you when the birthday of the child was. They'll ask you questions about whether the child was living with you. The tax program should take care of all that, and you should be able to, and it will ask you questions, and if you answer them right, you'll know whether you qualify for the credit or not. So no, there's nothing special. Just live with the child and
Have the social security numbers for sure, yeah. Get the social security number.
When do they give social security numbers now? She'll need to apply as soon as the baby's born now, right?
Yeah, usually in the health department, in the hospitals when they are born, and they give the birth certificates and they apply for the social security and they will receive the mothers by mail, almost at the same time like the birth certificates. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Yeah, we have another question.
Okay.
Another question is, I have a family, both of them, mom and the kid, they're in Africa. I'm like living with them because I pay for them everything they need, and we do everything. But just because they are now with me, is it a way to file for that family who are living far from me, but I support them with 100%
So-
of my money?
So he's financially supporting them. He lives here. He's a U.S. citizen, but his family he's supporting is in Africa. Is there anything he can do tax-wise for that?
In order to get the big credits, the earned income credit and the child tax credit, the child must be physically living with you. You may be able to get other credits if you're supporting your family, but I'm not really sure.
What I know is like, for example, if you have children that live in other countries than Mexico and Canada, because there is an exception for Mexico and Canada, and they could claim as a dependence, but dependence in the 2021 it doesn't matter anymore. But for your wife who lives in Africa, you can claim her together with you. There's an exception that you can claim your wife who lives overseas, claiming together, but she needs to have an ITIN number. And you can call us and we can consult with Attorney Mary Gillum, and we have done it before. And but for the children, they have to live here. They have to live here.
Thank you.
So in terms of making preparations, I guess, in terms of preparing to file taxes and claim your wife as dependent, I guess Paula's advice is really important. You got to figure out how to get an ITIN for your wife so that you can put your wife on your tax return. And again, that's something that the tax hotline can talk about. Okay, go ahead with the question, Michelle.
We have a student that's asking if there is a child in the home that is 18 and they are working, do they have to file their own taxes once they are 18?
Those numbers, so I gave some numbers earlier. Well, whether or not they have to, they should, because if they're working, they probably have had money taken out of their paycheck to pay their taxes. Basically, whether or not they have to, they should. That's what I'll say.
I will add it, like, for example, if the child is 18 and it's a full-time student, it's better for the mom to claim, but he can file his own taxes, but not claiming him as a dependent. So he cannot claim himself, but he can file his taxes and also be dependent of the mom, because will be a better credit for the mom or the parents to have the child on the tax return. But also at the same time, he can file his taxes by his own.
Okay, or the mom can still claim him?
Both of them, they can do it, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you're taking care of someone, but you can't claim them for the child tax credit, you might still be able to claim them for the credit for other dependents. So if you're taking care of someone who's a distant relative, or you're taking care of a relative who doesn't live with you, you may be able to take this other dependent credit. And that sort of goes to the question that the gentleman was talking about earlier. I don't exactly know the rules for claiming a dependent who lives outside of the United States, for claiming the other dependent credit for someone who lives outside of the United States, but it's definitely something to talk to a tax preparer about in case it would save you money on your taxes. The other dependent credit can reduce your tax bill, but that's all it will do. If you don't make a lot of money, and so your tax bill would be $0 anyway, the credit will not help you. So just as background, if I make $10,000 in the US at Walmart or whatever, I don't owe any taxes. I owe $0 in taxes to the federal government because of the way the tax system works. until you make a certain amount of money, you just owe $0 in taxes. So if you're in that situation, the other dependent credit won't help you. It won't reduce your tax bill. But if you're making a little bit more money, then it will help you. It will reduce your tax bill. So it's just something to talk to your tax preparer about in case it would help you. I can't, let's see here. Have you paid money for childcare or for taking care of a dependent? Then when you file your taxes this year, you should definitely get documents showing how much you spent and talk to your tax preparer about it. You might be able to get a bigger refund. That's especially important this year, and it's kind of important for years after this year because the tax law is going to change. So this year, if you were paying money for child credit, you'll probably get a bigger refund. And then in future years, you may or may not get a bigger refund. And I'm just sort of rushing through this. There are a lot of different tax credits out there. And you can use the internet to find information about other common tax credits. You can just do a Google search for common tax credits and see if you qualify for any of them.
The
For example,
IRS has a good brochure about other credits, and if you would like to have the brochure, I can send you by mail.
if you went to college in 2021, for example, you might be able to get a bigger refund. So that's just something, this presentation's too long already, so it's something you'll have to research on your own. But this is important. You can get free help filing your taxes. All throughout this presentation, I've been saying, talk to your tax preparer, talk to your tax preparer. The specific tax preparer that I think you should try to talk to is an organization called VITA. VITA is a government-funded organization that can help you do your taxes for free. VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And to locate a VITA site, you can call this number that I've written on the slide here. You can also use the internet. When I'm looking for a VITA site in Nashville, I Google VITA Tax Nashville. So very straightforward. So I want to emphasize that going to VITA is a really great way to have your taxes done. Because if you go to H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt or whoever, they're going to charge you $300, $500 to do your taxes, or maybe more if you're self-employed. So that's a waste of money because you can go to VITA instead. VITA doesn't have unlimited resources. They don't have unlimited people. And so they may not be able to make an appointment with you, but you should definitely try to go to VITA and have your taxes done through VITA because they do a great job and they're free. So please try to go to VITA to have your taxes done.
About the language, they have language online, and especially the VITA in Nashville, and there is no problem. So when someone goes there and they connect with the language online, and they can file any taxes with any languages. That's
Okay.
what the VITA.
Thank you. And when they call, do they have anybody that speaks different languages, or they need to do that?
No, when they
Okay.
call, no. But
Okay.
when they're there, yes. When they call, it will be in English, and then you could say, somebody with this language will go, and so they will be ready for the people
Okay.
who has other languages.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
To add to that, Michelle, if we have students who are at this presentation today who want to share with their teachers their name and their phone number and their language, we can try to send that to VITA and see if they can call them back with translation.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So this phone number is not super useful. I just want to say that this 1-800 number, it's an automated number at the IRS, which I think maybe has English and Spanish only, that will give you the location of a VITA site. In truth, it's probably better to use the internet to find the local VITA places in Nashville and then call them and look for more information there.
When
That's
you go
probably
to
the
the
best thing.
IRS website, you just have VITA, and then you put your zip code where you live, and then it comes the list of places that's near to you.
So if you don't use VITA or they're too busy to help you, you can either do your taxes yourself online or go to a paid tax preparer. Please choose your tax preparer carefully. Tax preparers can often get you in trouble with the IRS. Bad tax preparers will often lie on your taxes and tell the IRS you should get a bigger refund than you really deserve. That can be good in the short term, but in the long term, if your tax preparer lies on your return and you get a bigger refund than you deserve, the IRS is probably going to send you some scary letters about the lies your preparer told, and the preparer will not help you with those letters from the IRS. They will not help you with the IRS audit. The longer a tax preparer has been in business, the more trustworthy they normally are. So that's just a rule of thumb. Try to find out how long the tax preparer has been doing business, and how much of a public presence they have, how long they've been advertising, and how they've been advertising. And of course, once your tax preparer has done your taxes, get a copy of the tax return from your preparer. But again, try to avoid all this and go to VITA instead.
How long are they suggesting we keep tax forms now? 5 years, 7 years?
I just keep them. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but I just keep my tax returns forever, personally. But I think that 3 years is a good rule of thumb. 3 or 4 years is a good rule of thumb. Of
If
course,
they are self-employed, I think forever,
yeah, well, maybe.
maybe.
So let's see here.
Another clarification question. What are some of the consequences of sending false information to the IRS, maybe including on immigration cases?
I'll talk about the non-immigration stuff and Paula can talk about the immigration stuff. Generally speaking, the worst thing that will happen to someone who sends wrong information to the IRS is that you have to pay the money back plus some sort of percentage penalty. So pay the money back plus 25% plus 30%. So that's, largely speaking, in terms of non-immigration consequences, the worst thing that will happen. And sometimes that repayment can be avoided. So, and I'll talk more about consequences of tax problems later on down the line. But basically, the IRS will make you pay the money back, and they might threaten to take money out of your bank account in order to make you pay the money back. And we'll talk about more about that later. Paula?
A good preparer will tell you what has claimed. We have cases that some immigrants here, that refugees, they have claimed student some credits. And so when we ask them, have you been at the university? They said no. So I never been. So that, like Ben said, this tax preparer put this money that will be refunded, and it was wrong. And therefore, it's good to go to a good preparer and explain you after finish the tax return. Ask them to explain you what is on the tax return, and make sure if you sign, don't never sign with pencil. Sign with, if you're going to for the first time, and it's not going to be e-file or could be the first time by mail. Make sure to sign with pencil, because sometimes the preparer erases the pencil that you have signed and the paper. So also a good preparer will have a paper for kind of like an interview that you will ask so many questions, and so ask them also a copy of that interview, of that paper that the tax preparer has done it for you. And usually, like Ben says, for example, I know that this is a question probably like when you work and you don't have a social security, you have worked with a social security that's not yours, but you file your taxes with an ITIN, that's correct. The IRS doesn't have any fines for that. And the immigration, they know the workers, they do that. So there is no consequences, because but the consequences will be like if you knowingly use a social security of someone else, or that's fraud. That's not correct.
Paula, there was a question about if there are any consequences in terms of immigration if your tax return turns out to have been wrong, like you claimed wrong children or wrong credits or anything like that?
Usually not, because the immigration only will see if you have filed your taxes. And but if there is if the IRS goes after you, for fraud, then you will have a immigration consequences.
And
but
when you say goes after you for fraud,
like for fraud, because many the IRS usually when the people cannot has used a social security someone else unknowingly, and so you have stalled the identity, then there is a case, and with that case for the immigration purposes, that will be bad. But just filing taxes using with your ITIN or your social security, it doesn't have any immigration consequences. The consequences will be that you are required to file taxes when you work, as Ben says, and it's a federal law. If you owe taxes not to file, then will be against, because when you file your taxes, is for two purposes. One is with the IRS, like Ben says, but for immigration is for any immigrations, they will ask for the 3 last years. And also, if you are going to petition later family, you are able to support them. So there will not be a charge for this government. And also that's good for filing taxes. And also it's one of the purposes, because when you file your taxes, is a moral, you prove your moral ethics of filing taxes and do what the law says here in the United States.
So to sum all that up, Paula is saying that immigration-wise, if you file your taxes wrong, that's usually okay. But if you file your taxes wrong and you were stealing someone else's identity to do it, then that's not good. You might get in trouble with immigration if you do that. But other mistakes are okay. You won't get in trouble with with immigration just because you claimed a wrong child or because you claimed the wrong credit. So the important thing is to file your taxes and not worry too much about making a mistake. It's more important for immigration purposes to just file and not worry about it too much, as long as you're not committing fraud. Immigration-wise, if you're so basically just file and don't worry about it, and deal with the problems as they come up. So for people who are self-employed, do you drive for Uber? Do you drive for DoorDash? Do you run your own business? Are you your own boss? If so, you need to carefully keep track of the money you spent on the business. You should have a separate bank account for your business. Don't use your personal bank account for purchases made through your business. You should have documents like receipts showing everything you spent on your business. And if you're driving a car for your business, you should use an app to keep track of your mileage. Uber and DoorDash already do this automatically for you. And you should keep all these records for 3 years after you file your taxes. If you don't do this, if you don't keep these records carefully, you might end up with a big tax bill down the line. So the most important thing here, use a separate bank account for your business. Don't mix personal and business expenses, because that can be a huge hassle for you later on. If someone calls you and tells you they are from the IRS, just hang up. Don't worry about it. Just politely say, I can't talk to someone from the IRS on the phone, and end the call. If the IRS really needs to contact you, they will send a letter. So it doesn't really matter whether the phone call is real or not. If the IRS called me, even if I thought the call was legitimate, I would hang up the phone. I would say, send me a letter, please, and I would hang up. Because IRS scams, people who call people pretending to be the IRS, are really, really common. It's very common for scammers to call people and say, I'm from the IRS, you owe a big tax debt. If you don't pay the money right away, you will go to jail. That's very common. And so in order to deal with that, if someone calls you telling you that they're from the IRS, just hang up. Don't worry about it. If it's really the IRS, they'll send you a letter. Also, the IRS will never email you for the same reason. So again, if you get an email from the IRS, just delete it. Don't worry about it. They'll send you a letter if it's really the IRS. And again, never pay the IRS money unless you've gotten a letter about it first. So that's an important thing to know about the IRS. They may call you, but it doesn't matter. The real we used to say the real IRS will never call you. That's not technically true. But if you get a phone call from the IRS, just hang up. It's okay. You won't get in trouble. So this is just an extension of that. If you get a phone call saying that the IRS is saying that you're going to jail, it's a lie. Don't worry about it. Hang up the phone. The IRS has never tried to put any of my clients in jail. The person telling you that you are going to jail is probably a scammer. The worst thing that the IRS has done to any of my clients is to take money out of their bank account or garnish their paycheck, not put them in jail. And even then, even if the IRS is planning to take money out of your bank account or take money out of your paycheck every week, they will send you multiple letters warning you before they take any of that money. It is technically possible to go to jail for tax evasion, but that requires you to be deliberately hiding your money from the IRS. It's really, really rare for someone to go to jail for tax evasion, and it's especially rare for someone who's not really rich to go to jail for tax evasion. So basically, if someone says you're going to jail because you didn't pay your taxes, they're trying to scam you. 999 times out of 1,000. So again, if it's a phone call, hang up the phone and don't worry about it. Wait for a letter. Do you have more questions or need help? If you have more questions or need help with your taxes, like with those ITIN things where you were talking about, please call the Tennessee Taxpayer Project hotline at this phone number. Or you can check out the IRS website at irs.gov. I never go to irs.gov personally. I use Google instead. I think Google is a much more helpful place to go than irs.gov. But there's a lot of helpful information on irs.gov, so you might as well try it if you think it might be useful. All right, that's my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, so what I have to do if I need to fill my
I can't hear the
tax?
question.
Okay, so he's asking about filling a tax form out himself. What does he need to do? What's your recommendation?
Yeah.
My recommendation is to go to a tax preparer if you can. But if you want to fill out a tax form yourself, you can go online and get the form and print it out and fill it out by hand, or you can use tax preparation software online and do it that way. In my opinion, you know, doing your taxes is like VITA, paid tax preparer, preparation service online, filling out the forms yourself. Like that's the order that you should go through. So if those first three things don't work, then you can fill out the form yourself. But I really recommend getting some kind of help, even if it's just tax preparation software online. Again, I think Free Tax USA is great software online. Free Tax USA, you can just Google it and it'll take you to that website. It really is free, and they do a good job of helping walk you through filling out your taxes. So, did you have a follow-up question about that?
Can you hear me? Can you show us how you can make an appointment for Vita online?
I don't really know. I haven't done that. So, I mean, I would just go to the website and follow the instructions. There's in Nashville, Vita is through the United Way. So if you're on the United Way website, you're in the right place, and then just follow the instructions that way. So unfortunately, I can't give any guidance because I don't know.
What about
Chat book, I'm going to write the United Way Vita. That's really good. And the good thing is that United Way of Vita in Nashville, they are the whole year. So everyone can go the whole year. And after the tax seasons, they can help people who did not file the years like 2018, 2019. So I'm going to write the telephone number there.
So Michelle asked, is there any flyer with this information that would be great? I don't know what kind of information are you asking about?
We have just, I guess, the different numbers that they can call. But we can also just type that out if that's easier. I didn't know if you had a flyer with all the information in one place.
Yeah, like I was wondering the taxpayer project, that number, how is that like completely different from Vita?
Yep, it's completely different. It's
This is second source you can use.
so it's not, so Vita is all about tax preparation. It's about filing your tax return for the first time during the year. And the Tennessee Taxpayer Project number is more like all of the other problems that have to do with taxes. So if you call the Tennessee Taxpayer Project and ask us to file your tax return, we will probably send you to Vita because that's their specialty. But for any other tax problems, the Tennessee Taxpayer Project number is the best number to call.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'm out.
He's working little bit. Me, I work in full time.
Okay.
But if he left with me, if we were together, it's okay. They bring about money.
Okay. Her question is, she has one college-age son who's attending college and working part-time, and she's working full-time. How's the best way for her to file in that situation?
She should talk to her tax preparer about that because it depends on the specific facts of her
He
case.
can call me
and
the
her
tax
son's.
hotline and we will answer that question. We'll recommend what to do.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, but that's not.
Ben, we recommend, like, for example, if they are full-time students, the parents will claim the child and the child will not claim himself, but will file his taxes with his part-time. But they will go to the Vita at the same time. They will go to the tax preparer, both of them at the same time, so the tax preparer will know what to do. As Ben
I think
said.
that's good advice.
Yes.
Going to the tax preparer with both the mother and the son at the same time. Because it really depends. Like it depends on how much the mother was making and how much the son was making. And so the question about how to file isn't something that we can answer right away. It's something that the tax preparer would have to do after looking at the different income.
Any more questions on this end? I think we're out of questions. I don't know about Michelle.
Well, let's see here. The other classroom may have disappeared. So if you're out of questions, we may be done.
Well, we've got one online person. Yen, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Thank you
Talk to you later. Okay,
for
bye-bye.
inviting us. See you later.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate it.
Ben and Paula, and we'll see you guys tonight at 6. Is that correct?
Yes, 7 for us, yes.
Okay, great. And
Okay.
just so you know, we might be just a few minutes behind with the health check as well. So if you want to come in right like at 7:05 your time, that would be okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much, Paula. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Paula.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.